So welcome everyone to this afternoon's webinar at the Frick Art Reference Library, Introduction to Web Archives. We're really excited to have you all here today for our program, and we hope you enjoy it. My name is Michelle McCarthy-Behler, and I'm the reference librarian here at the Frick Art Reference Library.
Welcome everyone, I'm Sumitra Duncan, the Web Archiving Lead at the Frick Art Reference Library and head of our Web Archiving program at the York Art Resources Consortium.
In addition to my and Sumitra's presentation today, we'll also be having a Q&A session for the last 10 to 15 minutes of the program that'll be moderated by our colleague, Eugenie Fortier.
Hi everyone, as Michelle said, my name is Eugenie Fortier. I'm a reference assistant at the Frick Art Reference Library. Happy to be here, thank you.
Great, thanks Eugenie. Just for some housekeeping before we get started, we do have a live captioner here today for those of you who might want to see some live captioning or subtitles as we're going through the presentation. If you'd like to opt into live captioning, you should see at the very bottom of your Zoom toolbar an icon that reads CC. It might also have live captioning written just below it. If you select that, that should enable live captioning on your end as we go through the presentation. In addition to that, we'll also be recording the presentation today. For all participants, this will be emailed to you along with a brief survey, just to see what your experience has been in the presentation and the program as well. And that should be mailed to you via email by the end of next week is what we're shooting for. And I think that's all that we have for housekeeping today, so we can just march right into today's schedule and agenda. So first, what we have on the docket is the introduction, which is what we're doing right now, where we'll discuss some goals that we have for the presentation. Next, Sumitra will discuss what web archives are, as well as some NYARC initiative for web archiving, goals, and also types of web archives that one might encounter. Next, we'll go through searching and accessing web archives using some search platforms that you may or may not be familiar with. Some of them you might be familiar with. And then we'll close with exploring just briefly some other web archiving initiatives that are occurring on a local and then a more global scale as well. And then, as I mentioned before, the last 10 to 15 minutes we'll have for questions from you all, just in case there's anything in particular you'd like to ask.
Thanks, Michelle. So our goals for today's webinar are to gain an understanding of web archives as important research objects, gain an understanding of web archiving initiatives of the New York Art Resources Consortium, learn relevant tools for searching and finding web archives for research, and learning about current local and international web archiving initiatives. Next slide, please. So first, what do we mean by the term web archiving? As defined by the International Internet Preservation Consortium, IIPC, web archiving is the process of collecting portions of the World Wide Web, preserving the collections in an archival format, and then serving the archives for access and use. Next slide, please. There are myriad use cases for which conducting web archiving can be extremely valuable. Content that is either primarily or solely available online in a born digital format is among the most at risk for disappearance. And we are all too familiar with the dreaded 404 errors we encounter on web pages that suddenly no longer exist online, such as this example from the Frick's prior website. Web-based content being in a born digital format is highly vulnerable to loss by comparison to information contained in most traditional analog media. Given the highly ephemeral nature of this content, it is imperative to address the collection of web resources for future scholarship before they are lost. And in our case, at the Frick, those materials of great significance to art and art historical scholarship. The practice of web archiving over time serves as a preservation and access solution to the vulnerability and risk of loss of web-based content. A web archive may have any number of focal points as far as what type of content is being collected and preserved. Institutions may undertake this collecting activity to fulfill an internal records retention requirement to complement their traditional collecting scope, by including publications that have shifted to a web-based format from a print one, as well as to combat link rot and content drift on the web. A web archive collection may also be created for the purpose of self-archiving, preserving one's own website or born digital publications, online artworks, or social media presence. Most generally, web archives encompass a specific institutional or organizational website, are subject-based collections for research and documentation purposes, and others are created to preserve time-sensitive news or events taking place in our communities. Next slide, please. Globally, many different types of institutions are engaged in web archiving, the process of collecting, preserving, and enabling access to web-native materials. This includes many national libraries and archives, some with a legal deposit mandate in place. University libraries and government offices engage in web archiving, as well as some museum libraries and consortia. The Internet Archive, one of the major players in web archiving, is a nonprofit digital library with the stated mission of universal access to all knowledge. They provide free public access to collections of digitized and born digital materials, including websites, software applications, music, movies, moving images, and millions of books. As of this month, the Internet Archive has archived over 580 billion web pages in their publicly accessible web archive called the Wayback Machine. The Internet Archive allows the public to upload and download digital material to its data cluster, but the bulk of its data is collected automatically by its web crawlers, which work to preserve as much of the public web as possible. Archive.it is the subscription web archiving service of the Internet Archive. Since Archive.it's launch in 2006, approximately 800 partner organizations in the US and in 16 countries have used Archive.it's hosted web app solution to create, store, and provide access to collections of web content. These organizations include university libraries, state archives, libraries and historical societies, federal institutions and NGOs, law libraries, museum and art libraries, K-12 school programs, public libraries, and city and county public libraries. Quite a diverse range of organizations. In addition to the core functionality of capturing and preserving web-based content, the Archive.it web application allows users to add, import, and export descriptive metadata and allows for public browsing and full-text search via their websites at archive-it.org. Archive.it also provides APIs and other tools to facilitate external integrations with local websites and repositories, or third-party discovery or preservation storage services. Partners of the Archive.it subscription service benefit from access to in-depth training, documentation, and technical support from the service's web archivists and engineers. And the International Internet Preservation Consortium, IIPC, was founded in 2003 with the objective of developing best practices for web archiving, fostering international coverage through collaborative collections, and advocating for legislative support of web archives and their use for research. Initially chartered at the National Library of France, with founding members including the National Libraries of Italy, Denmark, Finland, Sweden, Iceland, Canada, Norway, Australia, the United Kingdom, the US Library of Congress, and the Internet Archive. The consortium has since grown to include national, university, and regional libraries and archives of over 35 countries. The IIPC develops tools, best practices, and standards to support international web archive collection building and interoperability. Next slide, please. Using archival file formats that are platform agnostic is key to creating materials that will remain accessible in the long term. WARC files are the international ISO standard for web archives and are compatible with current web archiving tools and services. WARCs combine multiple digital resources into an aggregate archival file together with related information. Resources compiled into a WARC file are dated, identified by URIs, and preceded by simple text headers. Next slide, please. So let's review some key terms and concepts in web archiving. A crawler is an automated tool, also referred to as a robot or spider, that explores the live web and collects data from sites. Crawlers identify materials on the live web that belong in your Web Archive collections based upon your choice and scope of sites to archive. Crawl, capture, and harvest are terms that are often used interchangeably to mean the process of collecting or downloading all code, images, documents, and other files essential to completely reproduce a website, ultimately preserving the original form of the retrieved content. The process also involves capturing metadata about the conditions of the crawl or harvest. These terms generally refer to the use of web archiving tools that may be somewhat automated or require a manual process to capture the contents of a website. Archived content resulting from these processes may also be referred to colloquially as crawls and captures. The seed URL is the crawler's starting or entry point to a website and the access point within the archive. The seed URL is typically the URL selected for archiving. The crawler follows links from the seed URL pages to subsequent pages. An example, if one wanted to web archive the Frick Collections website, the seed URL one would start with would be www.frick.org. Robots.txt are files that a site owner can add to their site to block crawlers from accessing all of it or parts of it. In web archiving, many organizations abide by robots.txt instructions as a form of respecting the creator's wishes. However, doing so can interfere with the ability to render the site faithfully when the site is only partially captured. Organizations can seek permission from site owners to bypass their robots.txt files in order to harvest a site that is otherwise blocked from being archived. The process of collecting web archives, which we call harvesting, crawling, or capturing in web archiving parlance, requires the use of software to download the source code, documents, media, and other files that comprise the pages. This process may be automated through the use of web crawlers or captured manually, depending on the software you intend to use. Playing back or viewing all of the resulting files from the process of web crawling or harvesting requires the use of a software designed specifically for this purpose, the most common means being via Wayback, such as the Internet Archive's Wayback machine. The software allows visitors to your web archive to navigate and view a website as it has appeared on the live web on a certain date and time in the past. Next slide, please. So now I'll give an introduction to NYARC's web archiving program. The New York Art Resources Consortium, or NYARC, is a consortial partnership between the research libraries and archives of the Brooklyn Museum, the Museum of Modern Art, and the Frick Art Reference Library of the Frick Collection. The NYARC Consortia was formed in 2006 through the support of a grant from the Andrew W. Mellon Foundation, with the mission of facilitating collaboration that results in enhanced resources to research communities. Shared goals at NYARC include improving access to art research resources through technology, advancing the scholarly, educational, and cultural enrichment missions of the three museums, and providing leadership in the development of innovative and model information services programs. Over a decade ago, the NYARC libraries started to identify how publication methods for the art research materials that we had historically collected, such as auction catalogs, raisonnés of artists, and gallery publications, were shifting from print to born digital formats. Given the rapid pace at which websites and their embedded pages or files are updated, we felt it critical that we start exploring solutions for collecting and preserving born digital resources significant to art and art historical scholarship. Having formed a consortium for collaboration already, the NYARC institutions were well positioned to leverage this existing relationship to investigate the best means of addressing web archiving. NYARC already had experience collaborating on implementing a shared union catalog for the three libraries, which is called Arcade, developing shared cataloging practices across our technical services staffs, and initiating shared e-resources subscriptions and a shared print program. Next slide, please. Now I'll share some key developments in establishing our web archiving program for NYARC. In 2010, NYARC began the journey to explore the efficacy of implementing a program with a pilot study at the Frick Art Reference Library. This pilot sought to evaluate the usefulness of the Internet Archive's Archive It service in capturing auction sale information being published only on auction house websites. In 2012, NYARC had a one-year exploratory grant from the Mellon Foundation, which allowed for research on publishing trends and input from our researchers on their current use and need for web-based materials. And we also evaluated our existing institutional systems and workflows. In late 2013, NYARC received a 2-year grant from the Mellon Foundation in support of implementing our consortial program. The implementation grant allowed the libraries to actively establish our web archive collections and to develop workflows for managing the collections. I was hired to execute the grant to implement our program and joined the staff at the Frick full-time in January of 2014. I've been in the role of managing the program now for 7.5 years, and over this time, web archiving has become a critical collecting activity for the consortium. We now have archived over 4,000 websites, which presently amounts to 8.5 terabytes of web archive data, or WARC files. Next slide, please. NYARC presently has 10 web archive collections, all available on our Archive It partner page, and each of these collections continues to incrementally grow over time. Sites of scholarly value are selected and nominated for inclusion in our curated collections, each of which is aligned with the collecting objectives and strengths of the 3 NYARC institutions. The web archive collections include 4 collections for our institutional web presence. We archive the websites of the Frick Collection, the Museum of Modern Art, the Brooklyn Museum, and the NYARC website and our project-based sites and documentation. Next slide, please. Our 6 subject-based collections include art resources. Next slide. Artists' websites. Next slide, please. Auction house sites and their embedded auction catalogs. Next slide. Catalogs raisonnés. Next slide. New York City gallery and art dealer websites. Next slide, please. And websites that are focused on the restitution of lost and looted art. Next slide, please. Similar to many other web archiving initiatives, NYARC's lifecycle for our web archiving program begins with collection development, curation, and administration, and spans from harvesting and quality assurance to description and access and preservation and long-term storage. We create bibliographic records for all sites being archived in our Archive It collections, which are available via several freely accessible search interfaces and full-text search through the Archive It interface. We primarily use the Archive It subscription service for managing our web archives, as far as shaping the collections, adding sites, running our crawls, conducting quality assurance reviews, and patching in missing content. Due to the rapid changes to online technologies and the complexity of modern websites, quality assurance is a crucial piece of web collecting activities. Quality assurance is of particular importance to NYARC's program, as the visual nature of the art resources that we seek to include in the collections requires us to fully capture and render in playback with a high level of fidelity the intended look, feel, behavior, and functionality of the content or embedded artwork. If the sites are displaying artworks, it's highly important that they're adequately captured and then rendered as the artists would have intended. And as a visual example of what I mean by quality assurance, here on the slide are 2 of my favorite snapshots of 2 archival web captures from early on in our program development. The one on the left is the result of a regular crawl of the Museum of Modern Art homepage by the Internet Archive's automated Heritrix web crawler. The one on the right is from a crawl conducted at the same time and of that same homepage, but assured for quality by our team at NYARC. From this one static image, I think we can all get a clear sense of why quality assurance work matters. And I'll hand it back over to you, Michelle, now to further discuss search and access for these rich resources. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Sumitra. That was very informative. So now let's get started with a few search tools to find and access web archive collections. Today we're going to discuss archiveit.org, the Wayback machine, NYARC Discovery Platform for searching NYARC partner collections, Fresco, which is the Frick Art Reference Library catalog, and OCLC WorldCat, which is a library consortium search platform that connects users to collections and services of more than 10,000 libraries worldwide. Unfortunately, normally for our webinars, we would be doing live demo run-throughs, but because of site updates, and unfortunately, I believe the weather on the East Coast, we've screen capped these demos for today's presentation. So first, we can discover archivit.org. Archivit.org is an open access web application platform created by the Internet Archive. If you're not familiar with the Internet Archive, it's essentially a digital library of Internet sites and other cultural artifacts in digital form. It currently allows organizations including libraries, cultural heritage, and research institutions to create collections of web archives for public access. In fact, most of the web archive collections that we'll be discussing today are searchable through this platform as well. So from this main page here, you can search by collections, which is the search bar at the top, just below this orange banner. That will allow you to search individual collections that would be useful if you're interested on a particular topic. But you also have the option of viewing a list of all included collections by selecting the link just to the right of the search button, which says Show All Collections. By selecting Show All Collections, this will bring up about almost 9,000 specific collections just from various collecting organizations through archivit.org that you can narrow down using the keyword search up at the top here, if you're looking for something specific, or you can use the filter results on the left-hand side, just beside the red arrow there, circled in red as well. Through the filters, you can actually filter by the type of archiving organization, the collecting organization if you already have one in mind, and then also by subject, which might be useful if you're looking for something relevant to a particular discipline. There's also a second search field located on the landing page where you can search by organization if you have one in mind. You do have the option also of doing similar to searching by collections, showing all organizations that are part of archivit.org. But you can also just use this search field to search by a particular collecting organization that you know is using archivit.org. So for our purposes, we can search for the New York Art Resources Consortium to find all collections of websites archived by NYARC. Doing so will take us to the NYARC website on archivit.org, where you can see that collections are organized around themes, topics, or domains, and often include captures of websites over time. So here you can see beginning just below this search field at the top, the search results list include just the first couple of collections that are included in NYARC, which are the ones that Sumitra was explaining before as well. So that would include websites related to art resources, artist websites, auction house websites, all of the NYARC institutional websites, such as the Brooklyn Museum, the Museum of Modern Art Library, and also the Frick's individual websites, Born Digital Catalog Raisonnés, and also websites related to art restitution and also looted art, as well as New York City galleries. So these are actually collections that you can select and go to the individual collection pages for, which is particularly useful for research. So if we select that first result, which is art resources, this will take us to the individual collection page within NYARC for art resources collection. And we can see that individual collection pages show you a list of target websites, pages, or files that an organization has chosen to include in that collection. So art resources alone for the NYARC collection include about 97 websites in total. You can use the search field right at the top there to locate a specific website if you wish. That will search the entire page text of all of the websites included in this particular collection. You can also use the search filters located on the left-hand side to narrow by subject, creator, publisher, and a range of others, including language as well. The filters are particularly useful, I think, with larger collections. As you can see, there's not that many for this particular collection, but if you're searching through the Show All Collections link that we had listed earlier, where you have about 9,000 results versus 97, that would probably be the best time to use the filters on the left. But so as you can see, looking at this art resources page, we've already have some 97 results in total. The third resource is really what we should specifically hone in on in particular. So that title is Advancing Women Artists. And you can see the URL is located just below the title, where you can see capture information and also how many times this website has been captured and between what time period as well. So we can see this website has been captured 4 times between June 3rd, 2020 and March 29th, 2021. Just below that, you can also see that there are 38 videos captured as well, which just lets you know how much multimedia was also particularly on the website during its capture. By selecting the link in particular for that resource, it will take you to the resource's own URL and calendar page, which indicates, again, the number of times it's been captured, also between the date range. In the upper left-hand corner, you can also see the URL just below the NYARC emblem, and also it'll allow you to look up the URL once again in the Internet Archive web collection. But what we want to actually draw your attention to also is just a little bit below that, under the Found Captures. You'll be able to see on the right-hand side, you see all the captures that are listed by date for 2021, and all of the captures that are listed by date under 2020. So as you can see on the left-hand side, we have the arrow that's pointing to the left of that. So June 3rd, 2020, if we wanted to see what this particular website looked like on June 3rd, 2020, we would just select that link. And this would take us to the archived web page that was actually captured on that date. So we can see from the top that this was captured by the collecting organization of NYARC using Archivit. We can also see that this page was captured at 7-Eleven on June 3rd, 2020, and then it's part of the Art Resources collection of NYARC. So this is one other thing to add too. So this is how, by looking at that banner, that's what lets you know that you are on an archived web page. But what's interesting about this too is that if you were on an archived website, you could probably also use the links on this website as if it were a live website. And that's because the crawler captures a copy of all the files required to play each page. So you should be able to navigate to all of the captured pages through the page links, just as you would if you were on a live site, as long as those redirects have also been captured in the same collection. So overall, Archivit is a great resource if you're interested in learning more about collections related to a specific theme or topic. We encourage you to explore those that have been archived through NYARC, but also take time to explore from thousands of other collections saved on this platform as well. Next, let's talk about the Wayback Machine. The Wayback Machine is also an initiative of the Internet Archive. It's a search platform that allows the user to digitally go back in time and see what websites looked like in the past. This is a great tool if you already have a specific web page or website that you're interested in viewing past iterations of, or if you're interested in finding archived websites that relate to a particular topic or theme or artist, for example. So we can see that there's a search tab right at the top there, a search field just to the right of the Wayback Machine logo. And you can use that to either search for keyword or URL. It is a little misleading just because that search field does start out with HTTP just to prioritize web pages, but it is also a keyword search. And then after you've put in your keyword, you would just select Browse the History just to the right of the search field. So for instance, let's say we were interested specifically in websites that were related to the American and Mexican sculptor Elizabeth Catlett. This, using this search would actually show us websites archived that relate to her work. So you can also see in these search results the links. Each link is also specified. Also the number of captures for each link, as you can see by the second arrow on the left-hand side. You can see the number of captures from specific dates. You can also see your search term there. The URL is at the top. And then these icons just above the capture information just designate what type of multimedia is included in some of these websites as well. If we wanted to see how a particular website has changed over time, you can type the full URL for the web page or website that you're interested in measuring. So if we were interested, for instance, to see the Frick Art Reference Library's website, how that has changed over time, we would just use that same search and type in the full URL for the Frick Art Reference Library website, and then also select Browse History once again. Now this takes you to a very different type of results page. If we want to see how a particular website has changed over time, at the top of the page, you'll be able to see how many times this website has been saved or captured in the Wayback Machine. So using this arrow in the upper left-hand corner, you can see that this particular website has been saved 767 times between November 2012 and May 2021. It's important to note that this is the amount of times a web page has been saved and not the amount of times it's been updated. So that's just an important differentiation to make. It's the amount of time that a website has been crawled by the Wayback Machine. Using the gridded timeline just below that, you can choose what year you'd like to see captures from. So if we wanted to, for instance, right now we have 2014 highlighted. Below that, you'll see calendar months and dates here that are specific to the iteration of that website in 2014. So in the lower right-hand corner there, you can see December 17th, 2014 is highlighted through one of the blue circles. And then within that, that cell, you'll be able to see different timestamps that represent the 2 or 3 snapshots that might have been taken captured of the page. So for this one, particularly December 17th, 2014, you can see 2 snapshots, one for 4:56 and one for 9:12 that was taken. So if we were to follow one of those time stamped snapshots, we would be able to access the actual archived website of how that website looked on one of those captures. So this is how the website looked on December 17th, 2014. And then you can also see the grid at the top is still there. That will just allow you on each archived website to go between different years. This is also a particularly useful resource if you're looking to understand basically data over time. A good example of this might also be something like the New York Antiquarian Book Fair website, for example, that's held annually each year. If you're researching trends in the antiquarian book market, for example, you could use the Wayback Machine to look at the offerings that were advertised and participating vendors using iterations of the website that were archived between the time frame that it was captured as well. So now let's just jump really quick to NYARC Discovery. NYARC Discovery is a single search catalog platform that allows you to search the library collections of all 3 NYARC institutions at once. That's the Frick collection, Frick Art Reference Library website, or rather collection, excuse me, the Museum of Modern Art Library, and the Brooklyn Museum Library all at once. This platform can be used to search for many different types of materials, but it's particularly useful for web archives in NYARC institutions all in one place. So how does one search for web archives using this tool? I recommend using a keyword search, as we've done with other previous examples as well, rather than narrowing everything to just one specific type. But let's say we wanted to do a sample search for web archives that were related to the prolific 20th century African-American artist Beaufort Delaney. So looking at the results page screen capped here on the upper left-hand corner, just under the NYARC Discovery New York Art Resources Consortium banner, you should see the search bar that says Beaufort Delaney, right to the right of the red arrow there. And if you go down a little bit further, you'll see include more results located in the filters on the left-hand side. Under the Include More Results filter, make sure you check the book next to Display Web Archive Collections Results. It might take a few seconds for that option to load with that checkbox, but that's what you're going to want to make sure is checked off in order to access Web Archive results in the results page. The Web Archive collection results typically show up in their own category as the second entry in the search results. So you'll see that there's a single entry just below. So you'll see the first entry there is an exhibition catalog for Beaufort Delaney. So that's actually a physical object. That's not a web archive. But just below that, highlighted in the red circle, you'll see web archive results for your search term. And then displayed just under that will be the very first web archive result, which is informational, but what you'll want to do is actually just below that to click a link that says More Web Archive Results, just to the left of that red arrow. Once you click More Web Archive Results, that will take you to the full results list of NYARC collections at archivit.org, the platform that we visited earlier. The archivit.org site will show you the website specifically archived in NYARC, where you can see the websites that relate to your search term. In this case, Beaufort Delaney, which we can see all the way in the upper search field there. You're essentially performing a search on the website texts listed in the site section. So this will include results from each partner organization and institution within NYARC. So we can see that there are 107 total results. We can see 1 through 8 pages right at the top that's circled in red. And then below that, we can kind of analyze these results according to institution. So the first result is an archived website for a MoMA artist file on Beaufort Delaney. And as we mentioned before, this was actually the first result that was on the NYARC Discovery results page before you click to the other web archive results. Just below that, so that's part of the Museum of Modern Art collection of NYARC. Just below that, you'll see that the second result is a Beaufort Delaney item that's related to the New York City Galleries collection. And then just below that, you'll see there's another item that's a website that's specifically from the Auction Houses collection. So the next platform that we'll use to find web archives is Fresco, which is the Frick Art Reference Library's online catalog that researchers can use to search collections specifically at the Frick Art Reference Library. Many of you have probably used this before to search for other resources, but today maybe you can learn how to quickly limit results to web archive collections held at the Frick too. For now, I recommend just doing a keyword search if you don't have a specific resource in mind, but maybe you have a topic. So if we wanted to do a sample search, for instance, for Isamu Noguchi, who is a 20th century Japanese-American sculptor, we would just type Isamu Noguchi in the keyword search field, and then all the way to the right-hand side, just next to Frick Art Reference Library, you see the search button. You can just go ahead and click that in order to access the results page. So the results page, if you notice, is going to include a lot of different types of resources, everything from catalog raisonnés to books and other sort of materials as well. But to limit to web archives specifically, you're going to want to use the modify search button and the advanced search that's located in the upper right-hand, or I'm sorry, left-hand corner, just under the Fresco Frick Art Reference Library emblem on the upper left-hand corner. So you can see that you'll see modify search is circled in red there next to the arrow. If you go ahead and click that, this will bring you to the advanced search page. Now, why wouldn't we start with the advanced search? If you're just interested with websites in particular relating to an object, you can go ahead and just skip that first part and just go into the advanced search. But if you're researching, maybe you want different types of objects, it's always good to start with a keyword, get as many types of resources as possible, and then kind of double back for web archives specifically, if that's something you're interested in. But on the advanced search page, you'll see the advanced search bar, which has Isamonoguchi, our search term, just in the upper left-hand corner. And then if you go down a little bit further, you can see other ways to limit this. So for instance, we have location, we have material type, and we have language. You want to hone in on material type in particular in order to find web archive collections, because that's essentially the format filter that will allow you to specify website. After you've specified website, you can go ahead and click search, located in the bottom left-hand corner of the page. So this will immediately, for this particular search for this artist, take us to the Isamonoguchi online catalog raisonné, which is a born digital catalog raisonné that many of you may have already been familiar with. So we can see through that there's only one web archive result for this artist. And this is going to take you to the catalog record for this resource that includes information like the website publisher, which is Long Island City and the Noguchi Foundation and Garden Museum. It'll take you to information for digital file characteristics, such as the text file. And then it also lets you know that it's updated annually and its current frequency, which lets us know that this is a live site still and not just an archived website. Just below this where it says connect to, circled in red, just below that, you'll want to just take a look at the access restrictions and also the summary, which will tell us what types of documents are included in this catalog raisonné and in these websites. Going back to the center of the record, you should see a section called Connect to Resource. One note to make here is that there's both a link to the archived website and a link to the live website. So this tells us that the website is still actively running and updated, as we saw above. If we select the current website, it's going to take us right to the current website that's still being updated. And then if we select archive website, this will actually take us to the calendar view of the Archived web page in the NYARC collection page that we saw in earlier examples, in which we see the number of times that a website has been captured, as well as select a previous date if you'd like to see different iterations of the website. So next, we'll just lastly do a final search for in the OCLC WorldCat catalog, where we can discuss how to look for in this particular union catalog, which itemizes the collections of about 15,000 libraries in 107 countries that participate in the OCLC Global Cooperative. This includes NYARC libraries and also most United States museums. So many of you may have already used this platform in order to find other resources similar to others that we've looked at so far. So here you can use this central search bar that says everything, and then to the right you see search everything, that button. So you would use a keyword search in order to use your search term in particular. We recommend starting with that, as I mentioned earlier. So if we wanted to do a sample search, for instance, for Beatriz Santiago Munoz, who's an artist based in San Juan, Puerto Rico, this will take us to the results list in particular. So the results list is obviously going to include many different types of resources. But if you wanted particularly to specify websites, then on the left-hand side, as you can see under Open Content and Format, you'll want to specifically zero in on Format and just go all the way to the bottom left-hand corner and make sure the very last checkbox is marked, which is for the website specifically. If you select the website, then you'll be filtered to just the one website result that it appears there is, which is the Beatriz Santiago Munoz website. By clicking on the title of that link, it'll take you specifically to the OCLC WorldCat record, where we can see the authors listed as the artist all the way at the top there. The author is listed as the artist, as I mentioned. New York Art Resources Consortium is also listed as an author, just because this is part of the New York Art Resources web archiving collections. We also have the edition and format information just below that tells you that it's a website, that it's a continually updated resource. So again, this is another occurrence where it's both a live website you have access to and also archived iterations of the website as well. The summary, which gives you a little bit of information that's included in the website. And then a little bit below that, you can see next to this first arrow on the left-hand side, find a copy online, which will provide links to both the live and archived website. Once again, by selecting the archived website link, wayback.archiveit.org, this will take you to that calendar view of the website that you'll be able to choose which iteration by the timestamp. Just below that, by the second arrow, you'll see find a copy in a library. So this is kind of misleading, I think, because that's really geared more towards books and other types of physical objects. But find a copy in a library for specifically a catalog record for a website will actually list libraries that have that website cataloged as part of their collections. So we can see here under Find a Copy in the Library that the Frick Art Reference Library of the Frick Collection and the Museum of Modern Art have both cataloged this resource as part of their collection. And then the very last detail on the third arrow on the lower left-hand side, you can see the genre and a few more details about the object and its format. So now that we've discussed what web archiving is, how to find and access web archives using various platforms, and also NYARC web archiving initiatives, we wanted to mention the exciting web archiving programs and initiatives that are actually taking place at other institutions on national and global levels. Starting with the Library of Congress Web Archives, the Venice Biennale Web Archives, Columbia University Web Archives, and also the Ivy Plus Library Confederation Web Collecting Program.
Thanks, Michelle. So first I'll discuss briefly the Library of Congress Web Archives. The Library of Congress archives websites that are selected by the library's subject experts, known as recommending officers, with collection occurring around subjects, themes, and events identified by library staff. Examples include select US government sites, select foreign government sites, nonprofit organizations, journalism and news, creative sites such as those documenting comics, music, authors, and art, legal sites, and international organizations. While the Library of Congress is not legally required to collect and preserve websites via legal deposit mandate, the Library of Congress Web Archive contains over 2 petabytes of content, with billions of documents making up the archive. The Web Archive grows at an impressive rate of about 20 to 25 terabytes per month. Arts and humanities subject-specific Web Archive collections include those devoted to authors and manuscripts, performing arts, visual images, web cultures, and web comics. Next slide, please. The Clark Art Institute Library has engaged in subject-specific Web Archive collection building for a number of years now in order to continue their practice of collecting publications and ephemeral materials produced in conjunction with each Venice Biennale. The Clark Library began to build on its comprehensive collection of Biennale-related literature in 2007 by collecting a rich variety of publications and ephemera that were not being archived anywhere else, both physical and digital, with many of them designed by artists. The Venice Biennale on the Web collection contains archived captures of websites, blogs, and social media posts, and web archiving for this collection began with the 2013 Biennale. Now I'll pass it back over to you, Michelle.
Great, thank you, Sumitra. So the Columbia University libraries have been engaged in web archiving since about 2008. Columbia's Web Resource Collection Program archives specific websites in thematic areas that correspond to existing library collection strengths, also websites produced by affiliates of Columbia University, and websites from organizations or individuals whose papers or records are actually held by Columbia University Library's physical archives. Some of the web archives that they include in their collections, some of them to note, are specifically the Frank Lloyd Wright collection and also the New York Places and Spaces collection. The Frank Lloyd Wright collection that the library began collecting in December 2019 takes you to archiveit.org, where it actually gives you information on websites for public and residential buildings and other sites designed by Frank Lloyd Wright. And then another, the New York Places and Spaces collection, is a principal thematic focus on documenting the evolution of the built environment and also public spaces in and around New York City specifically through the action of historic preservation efforts. Both of these collections were created by the Avery Architectural and Fine Arts Library at Columbia Universities. Next, the web archiving program at Columbia University is also part of a larger national consortium of web archiving at various institutions called the Ivy Plus Libraries Confederation, which is a partnership between 13 leading academic research libraries that include, besides Columbia, Cornell, Brown University, the University of Chicago, Harvard University, and also Yale and the University of Pennsylvania, among others. This web collecting program specifically is more of a collaborative collection development effort, and it's really to build curated thematic collections of freely available but often at-risk web content in order to support research at participating libraries and beyond. So all Ivy Plus Libraries Confederation members participate in this program, and their collections include everything from human rights to architecture to gender studies collections and even political movements. So we definitely invite you all to check out these partners as well. Well, we hope you all enjoyed this presentation, and we're ready for any questions that you might have. I know it's a lot of information. It might be something new to a lot of you, but please, we're ready for anything that you might be interested in.
Thank you so much, Michelle and Sumitra. That was definitely a wealth of information. Our first question, I think, is kind of related to access, so I'll pitch it to Michelle. As we are visually sensitive, any thoughts about how the ugly yellow top panel from Archive impacts the aesthetic experience of the sites being reviewed?
Oh, that's a really good question. At this point, I'm not sure exactly. Maybe Sumitra, you might know a little bit better of the back end of archivit.org in terms of the aesthetics or maybe the design for when it comes to accessibility. I'm guessing as the venture kind of continues and develops, that might be something they take a little bit further into consideration. I think right now that color and that banner with that information is more to differentiate what an archive site might look like. But that might be something that they're currently considering as well, especially since accessibility continues to, accessibility resources and tools continue to evolve.
You're exactly right. The purpose of the banner at this point is to differentiate that you're not looking at the live and current version of that specific website. And the participant who asked the question noted that there is indeed a hide button available. So if you don't want to have that displayed on the web archive version, you can hide that. And I can say just from my work with Archivit, they are in the process of a public site redesign. So I do believe that is something they're taking into consideration, and there should be some improvements to the visual appearance of a page in Archivit's Wayback. Thanks for the question.
Excellent, thank you. The next question, I think is more geared towards Sumitra. Could you clarify the difference between Archivit and archive.org? Do the collections overlap?
Great question. They do overlap somewhat, but I can say that archive.org is the main website to access all of the many resources that the Internet Archive has on offer, and the main point of access to reach the Internet Archive's Wayback machine. So the Wayback machine is where there are 580 billion websites archived presently, but the Archivit collections that we've also shown today, all of those collections are also included in the Internet Archive's general Wayback machine. So content from Archivit does overlap with content at archive.org. And you can click on the banner actually within the Internet Archive's Wayback machine and look at provenance information for each capture, each individual timestamp, and at times you may find it'll link you to NYARC's collections. You can see that we collected it, which collection of ours that web resource is part of, or you'll see that the site was crawled through just a regularly scheduled crawler of the Internet Archive. That they go out and wander the internet, as I like to think of it, just harvesting websites. But there are some other differences in the captures too. With Archivit, we're able to more specifically and manually control the scope of the crawl, give directions to the crawler to include certain content or to exclude it. And generally those automated crawlers aren't able to do something in depth in that way. So those captures may not have the same depth or breadth as captures that we're conducting on our end at NYARC. Thanks for that question.
Thank you. The next question actually kind of piggybacks on your answer. Does NYARC make it a point to capture all the pages from a specific website when a site gets harvested? And actually, we can pair that with the following question, which is, do the Wayback Machine crawlers maintain a regular schedule for crawling a site?
Both interesting questions. NYARC does attempt to harvest all of the pages of a website when we seek to add it to the web archive. There are at times some challenges in doing so. Many sites are quite vast or may include things such as databases on the back end or certain dynamic or embedded content that can be challenging to harvest and then render and play back. We're working with the available tools, but many of the available web archiving tools are a bit behind present day web design in terms of their capabilities. So there is the opportunity to do that quality assurance that I mentioned to try to add in anything that wasn't gathered on the first round. But I'll also note that NYARC seeks permission from website owners to harvest their sites and include them in our collections in a publicly accessible way. Therefore, if a site owner were to give permission for their website, we would attempt to harvest the whole thing, but have to make some distinctions as far as whether websites that are linked to it should also be included in the crawl, and if they're scholarly in nature as well. Thus, we may not link out and also capture the social media presence attached to a website, but we might include something such as press releases, which are relevant to the artist that is included in a website. And then as far as the schedule for which crawls are conducted by the Internet Archive, as far as I know, for some websites it is somewhat random, but the staff at the Internet Archive does have the ability to select specific sites that might be harvested on a daily basis. I know that that is an effort that they've undertaken for certain news sites. For example, the New York Times or CNN.com, they may have crawls conducted multiple times per day, but then we find some other websites are only harvested a couple of times a year.
Thank you very much. The next question is, if you haven't started to archive web content for your institution for PR and marketing purposes, what would be the most efficient way to do it?
I would say that it depends somewhat upon the scale, the volume of content that you seek to archive. There's a function within the Internet Archive's Wayback Machine called Save Page Now. It's on the bottom right of their homepage of the Wayback Machine at archive.org/web, where you can enter a URL and click Save Page. So if it's something that's not already included in their web archive, you could add it there if there isn't some sort of robots block on the website or some other reason that it can't be saved. So then you've created a permanent link to that resource for the future, one that you can cite or link to. Additionally, if you're working on a much larger scale, you could seek out an Archivit subscription and create collections specifically for your content, and then conduct and schedule regular intervals for harvesting the website over time.
Wonderful, thank you. The following question is about whether any specific metadata formats need to be used to provide access to collections, such as Dublin Core.
Dublin Core is actually built into the Archivit software. So we would be able to add Dublin Core metadata, the standard fields, as well as custom fields for any web resource that's included. So that Dublin Core metadata can be added at the collection level, the individual seed URL level for the websites, and additionally to items that are archived within a website. That same metadata could be added as well. And that's to add the metadata that could then be sorted from the public view of the Archivit page. Some institutions are certainly taking different approaches to access than we have here at NYARC. We create bibliographic records and rely quite a bit on full text search, but Others have opted to create records utilizing different metadata schema or including web archives in their archival finding aids. So there are a lot of options available.
Thank you. We have one last question at the moment. Can you speak a little more about your work with Born Digital Auctions? Are you working with auction houses directly to perform crawls?
Sure, I'd be happy to answer that one. That's actually one of the early areas where we started with our pilot study and have found that some auction house sites are much easier perhaps to crawl than others, and that ties back into the backend database issue of how the content is served to the website itself. Those websites that have a very massive database on the back end, it can be difficult to get all of that content, but it is our approach to contact the auction house directly, seek their permission to participate in our program. The technical work is done on our end at the library in order to harvest the website and include it in the public collection. And we've also been working with those auction houses who create auction catalogs in, say, PDF formats to archive those PDFs and create access to those with a permanent archival link, which has been one of the more successful areas. I hope that answers the question.
I think so, yeah.
Great.
So it looks like that's all the questions for now. Shall we wait about a minute to see if any further questions come in? It is a little bit
that's a great idea.
5. Okay.
Also, that's something to mention too. If we don't get to your question today, but it's something that you're interested in asking, please, of course, send us an email at library@frick.org, and we can either send that to Sumitra or myself, if others on the library staff can also answer it. And we'll be happy to answer it outside of this webinar as well. So you can email library@frick.org.
And it looks like that's it for questions. Thank you all. Those were really insightful.
Perfect. Thank you all so much for joining us today on Sumitra and my presentation. And we're so happy that you were able to join us, and stay dry and have a great rest of your evening. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.